Some neighborhoods have welcome signs, others have warning labels written by lunatics. 1. The garage door dictatorship. In one HOA, your garage door isn't just a door, it's a sacred artifact. According to their 37-page bylaw, it must remain closed at all times unless a vehicle is actively transitioning through the threshold. Translation: you can't unload groceries, work on a hobby, or even breathe near that thing without violating suburban scripture. One homeowner was fined for leaving it open while airing out paint fumes, a crime apparently worse than treason. When he protested, the HOA president said open garages invite moral decline. Moral decline, or maybe just the smell of Home Depot. Either way, this is the kind of community where a cracked garage door is treated like an act of rebellion against the aesthetic gods of cul-de-sac perfection. 2. The lawn color police. Some people mow their lawns, others are forced to curate them like museum exhibits. In one HOA, residents received violation letters for grass that was the wrong shade of green. The board had issued official color guidance, complete with Pantone swatches, because nothing says freedom like chlorophyll control. One man spent hundreds on turf dye just to appease the green gods, turning his yard into a neon nightmare that glowed under moonlight. The HOA's reasoning? Uniform harmony. The result? A street that looked like a radioactive golf course. It's the only place in America where Mother Nature has to submit her color palette for approval. 3. The basketball hoop scandal. You'd think a basketball hoop in the driveway was the universal symbol of childhood fun. But in HOA land, it's basically a declaration of anarchy. A family was fined $250 for leaving a portable hoop up overnight. Unsightly recreational clutter, the letter read. When they moved it to the backyard, the board cited them again for unapproved sports equipment visible from the second floor of neighboring homes. These people weren't enforcing order. They were waging war on joy itself. The dad joked about hiding the hoop in the garage and playing in secret, like the prohibition for basketball. Honestly, in some suburbs, laughter itself feels like contraband. 4. Trash day espionage. In one HOA, taking out the trash isn't a chore, it's a stealth mission. The rules specify the exact minute bins may appear at the curb, not before 6 p.m., the night before collection, and not after 8 p.m. on pickup day. One resident compared it to playing minesweeper with garbage cans. A man got fined because his truck broke down and his bin spent one extra night outside. Photographic evidence was emailed by a neighbor who clearly believes tattling is a civic duty. Another woman received a formal notice of trash neglect for leaving her empty bin visible from the street. Because nothing destroys community harmony like a lonely plastic container waiting for its moment to shine. Somewhere deep in a suburban office, a board member genuinely believes they're protecting property values, when in reality, they're just timing their neighbor's trash like it's the Olympics of nonsense. 5. The festive spirit crisis. It's beginning to look a lot like fines. Holiday decor in some HOA communities is so regulated, it might as well be run by the Grinch himself. One rulebook allows Christmas lights from sunset on the Friday after Thanksgiving until January 7th, 10 p.m. sharp. Anything before or after is a violation. A family once left a single reindeer light plugged in overnight and got a warning for prolonged seasonal display. The HOA explained it distracted drivers. Yes, one glowing Rudolph, a threat to road safety. Another family was cited for Halloween decorations that were too lifelike, including a fake skeleton leaning on a mailbox. The HOA said it was intimidating. So apparently, plastic bones are terrifying, but passive-aggressive letters from the board are fine. Nothing kills the joy of the season faster than realizing your twinkling lights need legal approval. 6. The Great Truck Scandal. Here's a real modern parable. A man buys an $80,000 pickup truck, top of the line, shining like a chrome dream. But because it has a small company logo on the door, the HOA deems it a commercial vehicle and bans it from being parked overnight in his own driveway. He's told to store it elsewhere, as though his F-250 is an eyesore dragging down civilization. The rule doesn't apply to the exact same truck without a logo. Apparently, wealth is welcome, but visible evidence of employment is not. The HOA later explained that such vehicles disrupt the residential aesthetic. Translation: they don't want to be reminded that someone in the neighborhood actually works for a living. So he had to rent off-site parking, paying extra just to hide success. It's the only community where achievement must be kept out of sight, like a dirty secret in the garage. 7. The Gnome Rebellion. The gnome, symbol of cheer, mischief, and, according to one HOA, aesthetic degradation. When a retired couple placed a single ceramic gnome among their flowers, they received a violation notice declaring it non-conforming decor. The wife thought it was a joke until she got a follow-up letter threatening daily fines if the offending figure wasn't removed. She replaced it with a flamingo out of spite. The board fined her again. A neighbor then joined the silent protest by planting dozens of contraband gnomes overnight, a miniature army of rebellion smiling in defiance. By morning, the HOA sent out an emergency email citing widespread decor disorder. It's hard to say what's worse, the fact that grown adults are policing ceramic lawn art, or that they use phrases like decor disorder without irony. Either way, the gnomes won the moral victory, and probably the neighborhood's hearts too. 8. The Mailbox Monopoly. When a delivery truck took out several mailboxes on one street, residents assumed they'd simply replace them. Not in this HOA. The board insisted everyone purchase the approved model from one specific vendor at a 300% markup because, and I quote, uniformity reflects pride. One homeowner tried buying a nearly identical mailbox online for half the price and was promptly fined. His offense, unsanctioned receptacle acquisition. Another resident asked if she could repaint her old box after repairs, only to learn the paint color was trademarked and could only be purchased through the HOA office. In a neighborhood where individuality dies by design, even receiving junk mail becomes a controlled aesthetic experience. The mailman joked that he should deliver fines along with letters, since the HOA seems far more interested in those than actual correspondence. 9. The for sale irony. Parade, there's no poetic justice quite like this one. A homeowner finally decides to escape their tyrannical HOA, ready to sell their house and start a new life, only to discover they can't even choose their own for sale sign. The HOA demands everyone use an approved model, complete with official fonts, colors, and size regulations. Apparently, Helvetica Bold is the only acceptable way to announce freedom. When one family used their realtor's standard sign, they were fined $150 and told to replace it immediately. Another homeowner tried making a homemade sign that read, "Get me out of here." The HOA removed it within an hour, calling it unprofessional marketing. Imagine that. They'll micromanage your exit strategy too. It's like trying to quit a job and being told you need HR approval to print your resignation letter. By the time the sale closes, you've probably paid enough fines to cover your moving costs. In the end, the HOA gets the last laugh. Even your escape attempt has to match the neighborhood's color scheme. The real message behind those perfect regulation-approved signs? Welcome to Suburbia. You can check out anytime you like, but you'll do it in beige. 10. The window curtain. Purge privacy? Not in this utopia. Some HOAs enforce what they call uniform window treatment standards, which basically means every curtain visible from the street must be white, cream, or light neutral. One woman installed elegant navy drapes to match her living room. Within days, she got a letter demanding she replace them or face a $50 daily fine. Another man was cited for having blinds that were uneven when closed. The HOA claimed they disrupted visual cohesion. In this community, individuality is more offensive than bad grammar on Facebook. When residents protested, the board doubled down, calling neutral curtains a cornerstone of neighborhood harmony. Harmony apparently means living in a Stepford suburb where every house looks like it was staged by a ghost. People started joking that their HOA should just install one massive communal curtain over the whole neighborhood. The only thing scarier than the level of control is the fact that everyone agreed to it, proving that sometimes conformity doesn't knock on your door. It decorates your windows, fines you for color, and calls it progress. 11. The swing set. Bureaucracy. In most neighborhoods, buying your kid a swing set means a trip to the hardware store and an afternoon of parent-child bonding. In this HOA, it's a full-scale permitting process rivaling city construction. First, you must submit a written request, including the swing's dimensions, materials, and color scheme. Then it goes to the Architectural Committee, which meets monthly. So forget about spontaneous summer fun. One father sent blueprints, photos, and soil maps. They rejected him because his swing set's color clashed with the community palette. Another parent got approval, but was later fined because the ropes faded from beige to light tan, non-compliance through weathering. The HOA suggested restaining them every 3 months. By the time these poor parents finished their paperwork, their kids had outgrown the swings entirely. It's bureaucracy raised to an art form, a place where even childhood joy needs a compliance number and an inspection sticker. At this rate, they might as well require background checks for teddy bears. Because in this neighborhood, fun isn't forbidden. It's just highly regulated, pre-approved, and subject to random audits. 12. The sidewalk chalk incident. Some parents buy their kids sidewalk chalk to inspire creativity. In this HOA, it inspires violation notices. A 7-year-old drew a colorful hopscotch path on the community sidewalk. Sunshine, hearts, and rainbows. The next morning, her parents received a letter declaring her art graffiti on shared property. They were fined $75 and told to restore the surface to its original condition. Translation: scrub joy off the pavement. The HOA's official reasoning was that chalk drawings may degrade property aesthetics and lower perceived home values. Lower home values? From rainbows? That's like blaming falling stock prices on bubblegum. When neighbors protested, the board doubled down, warning that unregulated creativity could set a dangerous precedent. Some residents held a chalk-in protest, covering every walkway in doodles. The HOA responded with a stern, zero-tolerance policy and actual security patrols. That's right, guards against pastel art. Only in suburbia could washable chalk be treated like a gateway crime. Next time your kid picks up a crayon, remind them, in this neighborhood, imagination is punishable by fine. 13. The driveway color catastrophe. It started with a power wash and ended with a neighborhood scandal. A homeowner decided to pressure wash his driveway, brightening the faded concrete back to its original color. Within days, he received a formal notice accusing him of altering the community tone. The HOA insisted his driveway was now too bright, disrupting the uniform aesthetic balance. They even attached side-by-side photos as evidence, one slightly grayer, one cleaner, as if this were forensic proof of rebellion. When he refused to restore the prior patina, they fined him weekly until the color dulled again. Another resident tried to stain her driveway a tasteful tan to match her house. She was ordered to remove it or face legal action for unauthorized pigmentation. These people are so obsessed with sameness that even dust buildup has legal protection. Imagine explaining to a lawyer that your crime was cleanliness. In this HOA, not only must your home look identical to your neighbor's, it must age identically too, because heaven forbid anyone's driveway has ambition. 14. The flagpole fiasco. In most places, flying the American flag is a simple act of pride. But in this HOA, patriotism needed pre-approval. A veteran installed a small flagpole in his front yard. Nothing flashy, just 6 feet tall with a neatly folded flag. Within 48 hours, he got a violation notice. Unauthorized vertical structure. The board demanded its removal, citing concerns that flagpoles may create visual imbalance. Translation: the flag didn't match the HOA's favorite shade of beige. When he refused, fines began piling up, $25 a day for honoring his country. After local media caught wind of the story, the HOA quietly rewrote the rule, now allowing seasonal flags on approved mounts. So the man could finally fly his flag, but only between certain hours and only at an HOA-specified angle. Because nothing says freedom quite like needing bureaucratic permission to display it. In this community, liberty comes with an asterisk, and even patriotism has to pass design review. 15. The Flower Pot Tribunal. A homeowner placed 2 tasteful flower pots on her front porch, one with red geraniums, one with yellow daisies. To her, they were cheerful. To the HOA, they were chaos incarnate. She received a letter accusing her of asymmetrical floral display that disrupts visual harmony. The board demanded she either match the flowers by color or remove them entirely. When she replaced the daisies with more geraniums, they fined her anyway, claiming the pots weren't the board-approved terracotta tone. They even attached photos of acceptable examples from other houses, as though there were an official catalog of sanctioned blooms. She joked about hiring a floral consultant before planting anything else. It's the kind of neighborhood where tulips require permits and dandelions are treated like insurgents. At this point, you start to wonder if the board president suffered childhood trauma involving a mismatched bouquet. Either way, they've successfully achieved the impossible, making flowers feel like a legal liability. 16. The welcome mat war. You'd think a welcome mat was a universal symbol of friendliness. Not here. In this HOA, even greetings are regulated. A resident was fined for having a mat that read "Home Sweet Home," deemed non-compliant text. The approved options were plain, neutral, and without slogans. Another family's mat with a floral pattern was rejected for being too visually active. Someone else tried replacing theirs with a blank one. It was still wrong, because it wasn't the right shade of tan. The board actually distributed a memo showing color swatches for acceptable doormats. A revolt quietly started when a group of neighbors replaced theirs with identical mats reading, "You again?" The HOA's response? Another fine citing hostile messaging. At this point, residents are basically living in a sitcom written by Kafka. Imagine paying monthly fees just to be told your doormat's personality violates the community spirit. Nothing says, "Welcome to the neighborhood," quite like a cease and desist letter on your doorstep. 17. The recycling scandal. You'd think recycling would make an HOA happy, saving the planet, keeping things tidy. Wrong. One resident neatly sorted his recyclables and left the bins by the curb. The HOA fined him for using non-standard lids. They said the colors didn't match the aesthetic continuity of refuse containers. Another family received a warning because their recycling bins were visible from the street outside approved collection hours. When someone suggested the HOA host an environmental awareness event, the board declined, claiming it might encourage non-conforming waste behavior. That's right. They're anti-recycling for the sake of uniformity. Residents joked that next they'd have to apply for permission to breathe eco-friendly air. In this community, saving the earth takes a backseat to saving appearances. Apparently, sustainability is fine, as long as it doesn't clash with the neighborhood's brand identity. Somewhere, a tree is weeping into its compost pile. 18. The mailbox height uprising. When the HOA decided all mailboxes must be exactly 48 inches tall, they meant exactly. Not 47.9, not 48.1. One resident's mailbox measured 49 inches due to a sloped driveway, a height difference smaller than a bagel. He was fined $100 for structural non-compliance. When he refused to pay, the board ordered a formal remeasurement using a laser level, like they were surveying a NASA launch pad. Another homeowner tried installing a shorter post, but it ended up 1 inch too low, triggering another violation. Eventually, residents began mocking the rule by decorating their mailboxes with measuring tapes and signs that read 48 forever. The HOA wasn't amused. They issued a final warning about public mockery of governance. Imagine paying thousands a year in fees so someone can measure your mailbox like it's a sacred monument. It's the only neighborhood where a ruler holds more power than common sense. 19. The garden hose rebellion. In one particularly strict HOA, even watering your plants felt like a covert operation. A homeowner left her green garden hose coiled neatly on her lawn after watering flowers. The next morning, boom, violation notice. The HOA demanded it be fully concealed from view when not in use. Another man got fined because his hose was blue, not approved forest green. So he painted it to comply, only to be cited again when the paint flaked off. One resident suggested installing underground hose reels, but the board said those could attract pests. Apparently, anything that isn't beige concrete is a threat. A group of fed-up neighbors staged a hose parade, displaying their colorful hoses in protest. The HOA responded with emergency fines, calling it a coordinated act of aesthetic rebellion. Imagine living somewhere that treats a hose like contraband. These people aren't managing homes. They're running a suburban dystopia, one nozzle at a time. 20. The driveway chalk crime. One spring afternoon, a group of neighborhood kids drew hopscotch squares on their driveways using sidewalk chalk. Simple, innocent fun. Within hours, their parents received formal complaints citing defacement of property. The HOA claimed that even washable chalk undermines uniform appearance. One mother offered to hose it off, but was told it would still be recorded as a visual disruption. Another family appealed the fine and lost. The board cited Section 7B, no unauthorized art visible from the street. To add insult to injury, they suggested future playtime take place indoors to maintain community presentation standards. It's hard to tell what's worse, the absurdity of the rule or the fact that it was written by adults. By the time the chalk washed away naturally, the HOA had already proven its point. In their world, joy is a violation, and childhood is an unapproved aesthetic choice. 21. The roof shingle crisis roofs. You'd think they were just there to keep rain out. Not in this HOA. When one homeowner replaced a few damaged shingles with a slightly darker color, the board swooped in like architectural hawks. The violation letter described the new shingles as incompatible with community tone. They demanded a full roof replacement, a $12,000 fix for a cosmetic difference most people wouldn't notice with binoculars. When the homeowner pointed out that sunlight made the old shingles lighter over time, the HOA replied, "Then you should have replaced them all earlier." Another resident received a citation for too clean shingles after getting a professional wash. In this neighborhood, your roof isn't protection, it's performance art. Perfection isn't just encouraged, it's enforced. Apparently, you're not living under a roof. You're living under a Pantone code. 22. The invisible fence scandal. A couple installed an invisible dog fence. No wires, no visible boundary, just a buried perimeter to keep their golden retriever safe. Harmless, right? Not according to the HOA. They issued a violation for unapproved underground alteration. When the owners explained it wasn't visible, the board replied, "That's the problem. We can't inspect what we can't see." The couple argued it didn't affect aesthetics, but the HOA insisted all fencing, visible or otherwise, must be approved. They were told to dig it up or face daily fines. Ironically, 1 week later, another resident was cited for having a visible fence without approval. So invisible was too hidden, visible was too seen. Apparently, the only acceptable fence is an imaginary one inside your head. In this neighborhood, logic is optional, but control is mandatory. 23. The parking space war. A resident's teenage son parked his old, slightly rusty car in the driveway while home from college. Within a day, the HOA labeled it unsightly and demanded its removal, claiming it detracted from community presentation. The father argued that the car was functional, insured, and legal. The HOA didn't care. They cited it under the No Visible Clutter clause. When the family refused, the board escalated by threatening to tow the car. Other neighbors, tired of the overreach, parked their own imperfect vehicles, an old Jeep, a dusty minivan, even a 1999 sedan with duct-taped mirrors, in solidarity. The cul-de-sac looked like a used car lot, and it was glorious. The HOA responded with emergency fines, but the message was clear. Not every car gleams, and not every resident bows. Sometimes rust becomes rebellion, and rebellion looks a lot like freedom. And that's suburban paradise, where the lawns match, the rules multiply, and individuality gets fined by the hour. Which one deserves a most ridiculous rule award? Tell me in the comments before the HOA shuts us down.